my beautiful friends. Welcome to that magical, electrical time of year when the Aries full moon culminates. I just find this time of year and this full moon to be so clarifying, magical, electrifying, and really life-giving. It helps me personally to kind of get a map of the year and to understand myself and my becoming. And I hope that that will be the same for you as well. This full moon, this particular Aries full moon, has some of the coolest symbolism I've seen in a long time. Really great full circle arcs, and I think can really help us get kind of positioned wherever we are in our lives now in a really clear and powerful and potent way. So I'm very excited to talk about this full moon with you and get into the details. So let's do it. We're here, right? So this full moon's happening on October 9th, and one of the distinguishing features of this full moon is that it's going to be conjunct Chiron. And Chiron is the wounded healer. Chiron has been in Aries since April 2018, so about 4.5 years when we reach October 9th. And we have been working with a lot of themes as a collective, as an individuals with Chiron and Aries when it comes to our persona. The face we put out into the world, the armor we put on, the survival mechanisms that we use to be a part of culture, all sorts of different cultures, family culture, larger culture, work culture, right? We've been doing a lot of work with figuring out what that persona is doing and how we're working with it. So this full moon is conjunct Chiron. And for me, this is really a moment where we can understand the journey of the last 4.5 years, how we have worked with Chiron's energetics, how that has affected us, and some of the healing we've been doing when it comes to how we connect with our persona. One of the things I want to just mention here with this is that, you know, the Jungian concept of the persona has been around for a long time. And this full moon is not asking us to strip it away and you know, cleanse ourselves of our persona so that we can be our most authentic selves. You know, authenticity is so valued, right? Like as something that we want in our creators, we want in the people around us, we want people to be authentic, of course. But I think that has kind of made the persona, the forward-facing mask that we wear, the costumes that we wear, the armor that we wear, kind of the villain in the equation there. Because it's kind of like, well, if you're wearing a mask, you're wearing armor, then you have failed to be authentic. You have failed to show up fully. And I think one thing I want to say about this full moon and the work with Chiron and the work with Aries energy, the work of the individual, the work of experiencing individuation and experiencing ourselves as individuals, is that the persona is not this problematic, horrible part of ourselves. But I think we do often put a lot of pressure on the persona to hold together everything, right? And the persona is there to help us connect. You know, my persona helps me to connect with you. It helps me to sit down here and do this work and let my energy be a part of the world. Our personas do really beautiful things, and some parts of them are going to be about survival, some parts of them are going to be about the enjoyment of performance, and some parts are probably just going to be keeping up with the status quo and just getting through it, right? But regardless, the persona isn't there to help us always get in touch with our soul or, you know, do the deep feeling work, and we shouldn't be putting that weight onto the persona. Understanding what the persona is here to do for us and how we work with it is really all that's required of us. And I think this full moon really allows us to examine that and to explore it and to find some compassion for the part of ourselves that is the persona and the parts of ourselves that need that persona to feel safe in the world. And I think that is much more liberating than constantly putting pressure on ourselves to be authentic and to have this kind of totally open book policy constantly in our lives, right? That's kind of the ideal that has come about a lot in these recent years when we've all longed for connection and clarity. So I just want to put that out there right up front. Now, of course, this full moon is going to be activating also the Libra-Aries axis. We have the sun over in Libra at 16 degrees, opposing the moon in Aries at 16 degrees. And this axis is about becoming ourselves and finding our center point. And that means also finding our center point enough to let go of needing to hold so tightly onto this is mine and this is who I am. So this full moon is also going to be about relaxing into not needing to hold ourselves so tightly and trying to keep our individual worth and value alive. Instead, to trust a little bit more in relaxing out into the world around us. Now, there's a final opposition going on with this full moon, which is Venus. Venus is getting here in the mix along with Chiron. So Venus is going to be at 13 degrees of Libra, opposing the full moon in Aries. Now, this adds a whole other layer to the conversation we were just having about compassion for the persona, right? Because Venus and Libra opposing this full moon is about how we long to be loved. The places where we might feel shame, or we might be totally afraid of failure, and the shame that comes with the failure, the judgment that comes with the failure, and these parts of ourselves being the parts of ourselves that are longing to be loved the most deeply and the most truly. So this Venus-Moon opposition is going to bring up some tender places in ourselves where we just long to be seen for who we really are, to try doing that thing and maybe it doesn't go well and still know that we are loved and that people will be there and that we won't be abandoned, shamed out of our cultural context, all of that. And I think that's a really interesting deeper layer to put on here, along with the work that we're doing along with persona, right? Because our persona is often our protector. It's often the part of us that's trying to protect us from shame and judgment and trying to keep the whole mechanism functioning, even if things are kind of going haywire. The persona is there trying to make sure that all our tender places are cared for and kept safe from shame and judgment. However, this Venus opposition is going to be asking, do we always have to hide these places that we feel deserve shame and judgment? And is it okay for them to be shared a little bit? And, I'm going to make a very big distinction here, which is, and it's something Brene Brown brings up in her work, our tenderest places aren't for everyone. There is no requirement that says we need to, I want to be an authentic person. I want to get over having armor on. So I'm just going to tell everybody all of my shame stories and all of my pain points. It's like, that was never the requirement. And not everybody is going to need to witness all of our places and parts in ourselves. So with the Venus and Libra opposition, this is more about if you have trusted people in your life, this is a really wonderful full moon to think about maybe how you want to express and release some places where you want somebody to maybe listen to that new song or that new experiment that you don't know how it's going to go, and you're a little scared to share it because you're scared you will be shamed and judged for trying something out or being a little different, or just expressing part of your truest self. And seeing that this is actually the place for the deepest connection and for the deepest, best friendships and relationships and creative expression. So I would just say with the Venus opposition here, this is just something to try if you are feeling in a safe and beautiful space. It's not a requirement to be authentic in any way, but it is going to be highlighting our longing to be loved in the places where we feel the most shame and the most rejection, or the most fear of shame and rejection. So overall, this full moon, the big themes are going to be that we have to find some compassion for our persona. It has been so vilified in our culture to have an outward expressing self. Somehow it's a failure of our deeper, truer expression. And our personas are tired. They are tired of carrying the load of everything, including, this belief that we have these parts of ourselves that we should be so ashamed of, and we're so worried of the judgment and the abandonment. And so this full moon is also a chance for us to rebalance a little bit of our vulnerability and to honor our persona for what it does for us. I think also in honoring our persona, honoring the way that we put ourselves out there in the world actually allows that persona to do a better job of reflecting who we really are by not expecting that persona to do all of the tasks, to keep everything together, to keep the peace, to be pleasant, to be likable, to keep us safe constantly. The persona can be there to be entertaining or to share information or to be able to express. A Four of Cups came out. Let's follow that up with one more card. The persona can do a lot of jobs in social context and creative context. It has a really, really wonderful role to play, but it can only do that work if we show it some compassion and we don't expect it to do all of the jobs. And the Lovers, hello. Okay. Very interesting combo, right? I think the Four of Cups, often when people see this card, it feels like a shutting off of flow, a time where we have to wait, where we have to feel impatience and the discomfort of not knowing what's next. Whereas the Lovers is often associated with flow and with connection, with the deepening of connection. But here's where these oppositions, right? Because this full moon is chock full of oppositional energy with the Sun and Moon opposing, Venus and Chiron opposing. They're all opposing each other. There's this really interesting conversation going on about the union of opposites and how there's a one that holds the two, right? And how they're all part of the same conversation, even if they feel like they're in different categories. And I think these cards really express that concept very, very well. It's an old alchemical and numerological concept of there being a one that holds all the other elements within. So, Four of Cups, excuse me. This card is one of my favorite cards, actually. I think just because as I've lived life more and more, I found these moments of grace and rest, which is what the Four in Tarot is all about. It's a moment of taking a breath. It is a moment of being not so much in the action part of the story as in being in the connected part of the story. And the Four of Cups is signals that we haven't seen the full picture yet. We haven't fully opened our eyes to the next pathway quite yet, and that's okay. You know, it is worthwhile to think over what we have moved through and what we have explored and who we have become, and to really be with that. This card also represents, I think, a little bit of our reticence, a little bit of our nervousness to fully turn toward that fourth cup. And this is the part of ourselves, right, that is hiding behind the persona, expecting the persona to take care of us, doesn't want to share maybe that new piece of art or that new song or that need or that desire in those scary places. This is also the part of us that's holding back a little bit because we're afraid of shame and judgment. So we don't want to fully see that fourth cup because we don't feel quite ready. And I think it's so important we honor the part of ourselves that does not feel quite ready. Along with that, though, this is a card that is an open invitation at any time to stop putting so much tension on ourselves to perform and move it through and get it done and make it happen, to take a step back and take the deep breath and exhale, and then to open our eyes and take a look around so that we have access to being able to see that fourth cup and what is wanting to come in beyond the tight containers that we put ourselves in. Now, the other side of this, right, is vulnerability. I mean, the Lovers essentially is the card of vulnerability. There's an innocence to the Lovers in that these are energies that are flowing with each other and feel so much safety and symbiosis that vulnerability doesn't feel as scary. However, that's like kind of the ideal form, right? That's like the energetic form outside of human life. So the Lovers is actually a card of deep vulnerability because it's about being seen fully for whatever we are longing to express. And this full moon is full of this kind of Lover's energy with this desire to be seen and appreciated for who we truly are and who we are becoming. even though we are terrified of the shame and judgment and the abandonment that could happen, because almost all of us have some layers of that going on, because living a human life is very complicated. Even if we have really great family dynamics and we have a really good relationship with our parents, which is only a portion of the world, even then, we as humans, as we experience things through this body and how we get wired, are all going to have some fears, whether that be about shame or judgment or being left behind or not being seen or what have you. And so the Lovers is about the vulnerable parts of us that's longing to be seen, even with all our fears. So for me, these cards really represent, and I think what this full moon is really representing is like the deep compassion for ourselves that we need in order to be brave enough to be in the world in the way that maybe our souls are longing for us to be in the world. For me, these cards represent the compassion for the human component of ourselves, our physical body, the persona that does all that work, all these parts of ourselves that we often kind of put off to one category, and then we have our soul and our true self. This is going to be a full moon where we actually take care of the parts of ourselves that aren't the centered soul harmonics that just know what's going on and are in connection, but actually the parts of ourselves that are working really hard to keep us safe. Paying attention to these parts of ourselves, paying attention to the longing that they, however, have to live a full life, to feel reconnected, to find a way through the maze of fear, of shame and abandonment and judgment, right? And that this is actually one of the most important things we can do if we want to kind of open doors, pursue life in a really authentic or vulnerable way. It's like we have to take care of the parts of ourselves that are a little nervous to open, and that actually allows us to open. So in some ways, this full moon is so simple, is so crystal clear. I think it didn't really require me talking for 15 minutes about these concepts, because I think we all intuitively know exactly what I'm talking about. But it is a really potent full moon, I have to say. And if you are feeling tender, just take care of yourself, take some deep breaths, be gentle on your body, have fun with it. I am going to be offering a really great way to work with persona, to connect with it, to move through it so that we can understand our persona and actually invite the persona's true work into our lives and to help it function at a better level. I'm going to be doing that over on Patreon. So if you would like to join me for that activation, I would love to see you there. I put out the activations a few days ahead of the moon cycle that we're in, so that you have a few days to really explore it and play with it. So I would love to see you over on my Patreon. It is such a beautiful community, and it allows me to offer so much more to you, both here and over there. So I'd love to see you for that activation. You can also find me on my Instagram, of course. I'd love it if you stuck around here. We are going to keep having so many amazing conversations in the weeks and months ahead. And of course, you can find me on my website, and I will leave all the links below so you know exactly where to find me. I will see you so very soon for our next chat. Eclipse season is coming up, my friends. So we are going to get into some really juicy stuff in the very near future.